I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled City Council meeting of August 6th, 2016. As you can see, we are all present, and the invocation tonight will be led by Bishop Tony Smith. Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me. Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee at this time in a spirit of gratitude, very grateful for the wonderful community in which we live and the beauty and amenities that we enjoy. We're very grateful for this wonderful country in which we live and for the freedoms that we're afforded by this manner of government. We're grateful for our opportunity to participate in these proceedings this evening, and we ask Thee to please bless us that we may do so in a spirit of cooperation, that we may all share our opinions, that we will have quick minds, we'll be able to make good decisions. We're grateful for the members of the City Council and others here. We ask Thee to please bless them for their efforts and energies as well. And we say these things.
So that leads us to the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to lead us tonight. Anyone is in the back that is with the Boy Scouts? All right. If you can join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So agenda item number 1 is presentations.
Move the presentations.
I'll second. Please cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 1, a recognition of Director of Management Services, Hannah Shin Haydorn, for her 7 years of service, submitted by City Manager.
All right, Hannah. You've been you weren't expecting this, but if you could meet me down at the dais. Congratulations. March of 2009. Does anyone remember where they were? March of 2009? If you were Hannah, it was your first day on the job. She has just a tremendous list of things that she's done. She started out as a management analyst. She then got promoted to administrative services manager and the director of management services. She's worked as a project manager for the Department of Defense, for USC, for Northrop Grumman, for Sage Educational Institute, the White House. She was Goofy at Disneyland. She was previously the Secretary General of the United Nations. No, she's had a just amazing experience, and some of the things that she's even done for the city. She's relaunched the city's website, expanded the city wellness programs, managed the implementation of the new HR and payroll administrative software system, revitalized the leaflet newsletter, and implemented the city's comprehensive social media strategy. She's also been a co-manager for our new civic center. So when are we having the groundbreaking?
2 years.
In 2 years, okay. So
the groundbreaking. That's
that's it. Great too. So Hannah's done an amazing job for us, and we're very, very, very sad to see her go. So with that, I wanted to give you this amazing plaque. I'll let you take it out.
I've always wanted one.
And also the certificate of appreciation. So, and you are going to the city of Signal Hill. That's the only city I know of in the greater LA area that's completely surrounded by another city. So that's kind of interesting. And you're going to be the assistant city manager?
Deputy City Manager.
Deputy City Manager. So congratulations, Hannah. She will be sorely missed. And next on, the dais, Greg DeLeon from Senator Mimi Walters, or Congresswoman. So there you have it.
Thank you. I had no idea about Goofy at Disneyland. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. On behalf of the Congresswoman, we noticed that you're 7 years of service to this great city of Lake Forest, and we just want to present you a congressional certificate of recognition for your years of service. So thank you so much.
So I wanted to thank the City Council. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve the residents and community members of Lake Forest over the past 7 years. Sorry. And thank you for the leadership you've provided in promoting a professional environment at Lake Forest so this amazing staff can do the great work that they do every day. And sorry. Thank you to Bob Dunnick for your leadership and guidance over the years. Your dedication to public service and commitment to professional excellence and personal integrity have been an inspiration. And Deborah's not here, but I want to thank her too for her guidance and support and the opportunities she's provided. I wouldn't be where I am today without that. And thank you to my amazing management services team. That's one of the hardest things to leave. This is an amazing staff who all pulls together and helps each other out no matter what. So it's been an amazing 7 years. It's been such a worthwhile and fulfilling experience, and I'm so excited to see all of Lake Forest successes in the years ahead. So thank you.
Thank you again. I don't know if any other council members.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just interrupt, I think
Sure.
This might sound like the Mutual Admiration Society a little bit with Hannah, but I did want to just inject a couple of observations because we, the staff of Lake Forest, and I include all of the department heads and others in this observation that Hannah has been an incredible and exceptionally talented professional in her field. I remember when we hired her 7 years ago, Deborah came in to me and said, you know, I interviewed this woman today who I think is so talented, and I think she's overly qualified for the job. I don't know how long we'll hold on to her. Well, we know the answer was 7 years. And it's been a remarkable 7 years, and it certainly has been a great return on investment for the city of Lake Forest. I think Hannah has an incredible public service career yet ahead of her. It certainly is Signal Hills gang. I told their city manager what he might be expecting, and of course that we were very saddened that she would leave. But I do want to say that it's been a terrific experience working with Hannah, and just the exceptional work that she's done for this community in just her 7-year period. So Hannah, thank you so much.
Hannah, I'd like to say thank you. You're going to be sorely missed, and we're thankful that you've been promoted because you certainly do. We recognize your value to our city, and I'm glad someone else recognized it and blessed you with that opportunity to be deputy. But as a individual that comes into the City Hall, I'm going to miss your Skittles on your desk, and so I'm going to miss you sorely because you're nothing but a great human being. So I wish you Godspeed, God bless you, and much success.
So that leads us to the kind of a transition here to the public comment section. So if anyone at this time wants to speak in the public, speak before us, you have 3 minutes. A little green light comes on. You have 2 minutes during that period. Then a yellow light comes on for a minute, and then you'll see the red light come on Unfortunately, your time is up. So if you fill out a speaker request form, do we have any?
Randy Johnson.
Welcome.
Welcome, Mayor. I'm glad to see you can join us tonight. Randy Johnson, Lake Forest. And first thing I want to talk about is the Orange County Animal Care. I checked the website before I left the house tonight. Still inflated by 2.4%, the dog license compliance rate. They still have us understated on population by over 3,800. And the three of you, once again, trapped us into this long-term 10-year contract, and which has no cost control provisions or performance standards for the county. You said you're going to hold the county accountable. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? And no wonder Bartlett and Spitzer endorsed you for a second term, Mr. Robinson. Okay, the main reason I'm here tonight is to discuss Village Pond Park. Now, I have submitted a package of information for each of you. This is available to the public tomorrow online. It's a comprehensive report on what's been going on in the Village Pond Park. Now, as you're aware, there have been some major problems with the Village Pond Park. And the reason I'm here tonight is to ask you to, someone on the council, to make a motion to get a second legal opinion on the decision to place a gag order on the council and the decision to delay the reconstruction of the Village Pond Park. I think this is absolutely mandatory at this time. Somebody's got to have the courage in order to do this, and you need to put your votes on the line for everybody to see. Now, in this report, I mentioned to you that I went to the courthouse and I checked out this active lawsuit. I was unable to find the Village Pond Park mentioned whatsoever in this lawsuit, and I read the entire thing start to finish. I read the entire thing. Village Pond Park was not even mentioned, okay? I had the impression from the beginning the reason that you couldn't talk about it because it was in the lawsuit. It's not in the lawsuit. I checked. It's not, okay? And also, at the last meeting, the city stated that there were reference claims which caused the concern for potential for litigation. I put in an ALF request, a Ask Lake Forest request, for these claims. In return, I received a letter from the Lake Forest Community Association to the city, which was dated back 2012, over 4 years ago. And they discussed the actual water quality of the pond, etc. Okay? This was 4 years ago. There's been no lawsuit since that time on the Village Pond Park. Zero. Nilch. The other one was a claim for damages back in 2014, and this is included in the packet for everybody to read. Okay? That had to do exclusively about the lake. It had nothing at all to do with the Village Pond Park. Okay? Where's the claim that about the Village Pond Park that remains active, okay, that prohibits us from discussing, having a dialogue with you about...
Thank you for your comments. So, I think there was a recent letter that went out, and to not talk about it, I would see if maybe the city attorney could maybe, I don't know if you want to read it verbatim or whatever. At least I think the kind of the last few paragraphs may have some discussion. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I don't have that letter in front of me, but I can briefly explain, as I did at the last meeting, the lay of the land with the Village Pond Park issue. The city and the Lake Forest Community Association are in ongoing negotiations to resolve and settle disputes related to stormwater and water quality issues on both city and association property. Village Pond Park is central to those negotiations to resolve and settle these disputes. The disputes, the negotiations, and Village Pond Park and its role in them have been and continue to be the subject of closed session discussions.
Excuse me, Mr. Attorney, you used the word central, and I've read Mr. Johnson's excellent memo, and he didn't seem to find, I don't understand, maybe you could explain to us how Village Pond Park is central to those negotiations?
Well, the negotiations are not included in the complaint filed by the association. They, of course, would not be included in any of those records that were submitted by Mr. Johnson in his detailed memo. Negotiations are, of course, typically done verbally and have been done verbally by the parties. There have been a number of discussions between the association and the city, and Village Pond Park has been a central component of those discussions.
Would it be true that the city and Village Pond Park have been discussing water quality for 30 years, 40 years?
I can't comment on that. I haven't been around for 30 or 40 years.
I probably have to stop, otherwise I'll have a lawsuit against me. So I'll stop.
There's been at least 3 outbursts from the audience. Mr. Vizquay, this is your warning. Any other public speakers?
We've had no further requests.
All right, so let's go to the consent calendar. Agenda item number 2.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, this is item number 2, the warrant register, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That motion carries unanimously.
And we'll move on to consent calendar items 3 through 8.
I'll move the items.
I will second that.
Please cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously. Takes us to discussion, agenda item 9, 2015 through 17 capital improvement projects budget review, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I will defer to Mr. Wheeler for his presentation on the update to the capital improvement budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight, staff would like to review the current status of the 2-year CIP and recommend a few modifications to the existing program. Traditionally, staff brings the 2-year CIP in the mid-cycle or 1 year after the council's adopted it. Most of the program was developed early in 2015, so it gives us a chance to make mid-year adjustments as necessary. The city currently has 43 CIP projects. They include 12 projects that are street improvement related, 11 that are traffic related, 16 park related projects, and 4 environmental projects. Over 50% of the projects are either complete or in the construction phase. We have 17 that are in the design phase, and 3 are waiting on grant funding to proceed. The detailed status of each project is found in attachment 1 of the report, and we can certainly answer any questions that you may have about their status. We have 6 projects that we want to either add or modify in some way that are currently in the CIP or need to be added to the CIP. The first request is for additional security cameras at the sports park and at Etnies Skate Park. What you see up on the screen are additional locations. 7 of the 16 additional cameras at the 86-acre sports park would go inside the recreation building, allowing staff to be able to see the computer lab better, the entrances to the building better. Also, adding cameras around strategically around the entrances with license plate recognition software, and a few other places that have gaps in the coverage. As you know, we've had a number of vandalism, a great amount of vandalism, theft of items out there in the sports park. So we feel this will help, obviously, make it safer, less vandalism, be able to go after whoever does damage anything. This also includes storage, all the backup and digital software that's necessary for storage of the items. The next slide shows Etnies Skate Park. Etnies has analog cameras that really we don't have clear images anymore. that we can get from this would change the 10 existing cameras into 11 cameras in total, digital cameras, be able to, again, capture images, license plate recognition when it comes into the park, and help with reducing liability, safety, and also hopefully reducing the amount of vandalism that we experience there. The cost is approximately $134,000 for those projects. It'd be managed by community services staff. Yeah, that's the first project that we're recommending. The second project is a project you've already approved. That's the Whispering Hills.
Excuse me, did you want us to comment project by project or wait till the end? Any preference?
We could go project by project, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, I had no comments. I just wanted to know how you wanted to do it.
I actually do. On the license plate imaging, is that entrance and exit of the park?
Yes, yes, it is.
So we'll catch the license plates as they come in, as they go out?
That's correct.
Many of the times that I've been there, I've seen our young children playing out there and sometimes wandering off without parents. And so I've always wondered about that, if we had imaging that caught license plate. And so I'm thankful that you guys have put that in there. And, the amazing staff that you guys are, I never doubted that you guys had it up there, but I'm thankful that you guys are putting it up there now. So thank you so much.
Good. Thank you.
I'm a little concerned that maybe the 16 at the sports park might not be enough. So I was just wondering if you guys had a rationale for why you chose that number. I mean, when we compare it from a size to the skate park, it's significantly different. So I don't know if we're just trying to manage expenses closely right now and looking to add more in the future, or what we might do. But I know that some of we had some copper wire theft. Was that correct? And that in and of itself is pretty expensive to replace, I know. And so just want to make sure that we have all the security we need. It's also a very big facility, and there's a lot of kids running around and things like that. And so I just wanted to kind of get your rationale for the 16.
Sure. Thank you for the question. What staff is, we actually went out there with the camera contractor that operates the current system, and we essentially mapped out the park, and we looked at all the areas of the 80-acre facility that are currently covered, then those that we think need to have additional coverage. One of the things we considered the copper wire theft and what kind of footage would have actually allowed us to catch that individual. That likely would have been the license plate recognition software. If you look at the diagram, I guess it still is up there, the blue dots around the outside, they may be difficult to see, but those are actually the cameras. A lot of those cameras are high up on poles, and they're fixed cameras, or they're the pan, tilt, zoom cameras. They have the wide range, the wide view of the park, and when it comes down to focus in on something, they can get pretty close, but it's difficult to really focus in on a specific suspect or a license plate. And that's why we're looking partly at the license plate vehicles, but also a lot of these cameras that we're adding are around the actual buildings. So Tom mentioned that we have 7 going into the rec center. We're looking at the usage patterns. We have a lot of foot traffic in and out of that facility. So we're looking to put them in places that we think make sense. The computer room, the gymnasium, the meeting rooms, each entrance to the recreation center so that we can catch people going in and out. And then two cameras at each clubhouse, the north clubhouse and the south clubhouse. So it was a combination of looking at what isn't covered and also what kind of coverage would have helped us identify individuals that have vandalized the park in the past.
Okay, thanks. And do we have a timeline for analyzing whether or not this does cover everything? I mean, we're going to be looking at this again a year from now.
I think that we'll probably have a better idea in the next few months as we order the equipment and we get the equipment installed. We'll have a better idea. But that was part of the study that we conducted. We did map that out with the contractor, so we think that we have much better coverage around the facility and the buildings themselves than we did before, or than we currently do.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for the city attorney, and I'm a little concerned that having this online gives the robbers kind of here's where I need to go. So would it be against any kind of laws if it's great that we see it now, but if the online versions were edited to take out the kind of information that potential thieves might use?
Mr. Mayor, Council, we have to take a look at that. And, those the laws that are at play with that question are fairly complicated. We can take a look at that and get back to the council.
I actually have a few questions regarding the license plate scanner. Could you maybe just briefly describe, is it like an active system and you're getting license plates all the time? Is it just, the pictures are and then you select, the pictures are done. This could be option 2, right? Or there's maybe other options, but maybe option 2 is you take the picture, you only do a license plate. You only get that information off the picture for a license plate for specific situations. Could you just describe that, or maybe a third option?
Sure. Well, the license plate cameras are actually, they're like the rest of the cameras in the park where they're continually running. So they're going to capture every vehicle that enters the park and leaves the park. And the only time we would generally review that footage would be as if we had some kind of an incident where we had to determine what happened, who might have been there.
But for the license plate reader, it's actually capturing the license plate number.
It does.
Is that every single vehicle that comes into the park is tagged and that information is going into a database? Or is it only when reviewable and you do something to capture that license plate number?
It's the latter. So it's something that it's video footage, and we save the video footage in accordance with the state law for a period of 1 year. If something happens, then it's like any other camera where we would review the footage to see what's there. Okay. But it doesn't automatically send the license plate numbers to a database somewhere. Okay. There are services that municipalities can pay for that do that. We have not done that. We're not proposing that.
Okay. Does the city have any license plate readers databases currently for any other locations?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's city database? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. The next project is a project actually that last February the City Council directed us to move forward on. That's the Whispering Hills, the Green Up Plan. If you've driven by there lately, it's just about done. That turned out pretty well. This action would just officially add the project and its associated funding into the CIP. So you directed us to do that. This adds it. Originally, the project estimate was about $64,000, but it looks like we'll be closer to $34,400. So we are requesting in this action that the City Council add the $34,000 into the CIP.
I actually have an item on this. The Irvine Ranch Water District has their own recycling plants and supply of water for recycled water. During certain times of the year, they have excess water. I think it's mostly in the winter because in the summer they have a lot of demand for recycled water. So it didn't surprise me at all that they paid, and I just wanted to make sure and confirm that they paid 100% of the connection to the recycled water. I mean, this property is now serviced by some recycled water, and they paid 100% of that.
Correct. They added the recycled water meter and tapped into this street to connect.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if there are other places, I know that we're just talking about this one right now, but I think it'd be very interesting for us to do a not too time-consuming analysis of other city property where they may pay 100% of the cost to hook up property into their recycled water system because they have that, excess water, especially in the off-peak times. I think we might get a pretty good bang for our buck on those, especially if it's free.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think that's a good idea because, they're going to build the dam, which, for those of you who don't know, Andrew works for a water district, so I'm talking to the converted here. But they are going to build that dam up by the 133. At the point that they build the dam at the 133, they're less inclined to be so generous with their recycled water because they won't have to give it out into the ocean. So now would be the time to strike, and you or I should bring that up in the council comments thing and see if we can't get consensus on that. Good idea.
That sounds good.
Actually, we are actively meeting with them. Whispering Hills was our first park to do that. Darren Park is our second park to do that. We've looked at some others, so we can provide council with an update on those meetings. It's part of our drought reduction implementation plan that's in our CIP. So we'll give you an update on where we're at status-wise on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Note of that. The third project is really, it's about replacing about 400 feet of fence around Montgomery Park. It's been damaged. It's really in bad shape. It's old, rusted out, and those are prone to snap off when they're rusted. So we really wanted to implement this project sooner than later, and that's why we're bringing it forward to add it to the CIP this year. It's about $36,000 and would be added from CIP funds. Okay, thank you. And then also a few modifications. The fourth project is the ADA ramp at Tamarisk Park. It's currently under construction. Last May, the City Council approved that project, and similar to Whispering Hills, when the City Council approved that project, they awarded, there's two sources of funding, the CDBG funds and the CIP funds, and at that time, Council directed staff to come back and added officially the CIP funding into the CIP plan for during this mid-year CIP review. So that's $275,000 of CIP funding for the project that would officially cover the remaining of the construction costs. And that project should be complete by next month. And then the next project is the Big Belly trash recycling receptacles. If you remember, Big Belly is our solar-powered trash compactors. Each unit is able to retain more trash than regular waste bins, and when it's full, it sends a wireless signal to be picked up. We've tested a few of the units at the sports park. We thought they worked well. They're becoming more popular. However, they're also becoming more expensive. And as we looked at it, we talked to the company about purchasing these. They said, no, we're changing our model now. Now we're changing from purchasing at $6,000 to leasing them for $9,000 for a 5-year lease. We said, thanks, but I think we can do better with the old-fashioned technology of the regular recycling bins coupled with the trash. So staff would, and then there's also the upfront ongoing leasing costs also involved with those. So staff reevaluated the project in light of these new costs. We recommend that we change the bin type that we use. Those are approximately $2,700 each. It's a one-time cost. So with that proposed funding, it allowed the city to add about 40 units, so we'd use them at existing bus shelters and at some of our parks instead of just 12 Big Belly units. This money is set-aside money. It's special money from the state, from their beverage container recycling payment program, so it can only be used on recycling-related expenses. So we took this opportunity also to look at our what was in the fund balance that's remaining in that account. There's another $37,900 in that fund balance. So we're requesting the council also move that fund balance into this account so we can purchase all of the recycling and trash compactors at one time, or not compactors, the recycling units at one time. And the last project is...
Before you, I have a question, and I think Councilman Robinson, go ahead, why don't you go first?
I just wanted to mention, I think there's some areas in town where I'd like to see more. And I'm not exactly sure how we do that with right-of-way issues and whether the city owns property and we can put receptacles in particular areas. But I've had quite a few residents talk to me about specific areas in town. I'd just label them troubled areas where there just seems to be a lot of trash. And so I'd like to further develop some ideas there on where we might be able to put more of these. So I've heard places like 2nd Street, which we've talked about regarding a number of issues, Osterman, Rockfield. I'm sure some of my colleagues would know of plenty of other areas. So I just want to start the discussion see what we might be able to do to find some additional locations. I think that, it's not necessarily subscribing to the Disneyland model where I think they say something like every 20 feet have a trash can and then there's no trash on the ground kind of thing. But, I think that if we added a few more out there, then we'd probably have less debris and litter in some of the more troubled areas. So I just thought this might be a good time to mention that.
Terrific idea. As you guys hear from the citizens, certainly give that to us. I can go back and talk to some of our inspectors and contractors also, and I think that's a terrific idea that staff can go back and look at and see where some troubled areas are, and see what we can do from adding more features out there and picking those up.
I was just going to ask if there's any competitors to Big Billy.
No, there's not. That was one of the big issues. When we first researched it, we went through a kind of a sole source issue because they were the only game in town. They're popular. I've seen them at high schools, and they're really resistant to vandalism. And it's got some advantages. Like I said, they're very popular. They work well. They just all of a sudden, 50% increase in cost, and it really just didn't make sense when we have the staff to really empty them anyways. That wasn't really a huge burden. So with the cost, we can do a lot more with these other units.
Thanks.
Thank you. And let's see, that's Big Billy. Thank you. And the last project is really a general painting and repairs, kind of a general facelift at Neat Skate Park. It was originally constructed in 2003. It was expanded in 2011. No major repairs have really been done to the facility, the office building itself. We were out there. We had currently we have a $30,000 project to do painting out there. We were looking at doing the painting the median island fencing out on Lake Forest Drive. It's starting to flake off and needs a new paint job. As we look deeper into it and talk to the skate park, and we've got some recent promotions out there. And there's a number of areas that we'd like a general refreshing. One of the nicest facilities arguably in the West Coast. So what staff is requesting or recommending is an additional $50,000 for the facility. We'd like to paint the office building and the front entrance, paint and repair the perimeter fencing around the outside of the actual skate park. So apply sealant to the restroom floors and walls, waterproof or weatherproof, repair and paint the office, replace and repair some of the existing tables and benches that are outside of the park, and the additional funding would come from the CIP fund. So that, I think I got one last slide in there. No, I got another slide in there. Yeah. So that really concludes what staff is preparing. Not a whole lot of changes like we did 2 years ago, but these are the things that we feel would make sense to change right now and update right now with regards to our CIP. It represents over $500,000 in additional benefits to the community. And with that, we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any public speakers on site?
We've had no requests.
We'll bring it back to the council.
I'm a little worried that the dog park shade structure didn't appear on here. We had several comments, and I've had several discussions with staff about doing that. And I'm told my dogs are too old, so I don't use the dog park. But I'm told by people, anybody here use the dog park? Yeah. I'm told it's really hot out there on the hot days we've had, and given the kind of grass cover. So we've had several requests for some kind of a shade structure. And I believe you, Mr. Wasserman, didn't you get some preliminary quotes or ideas on what that would cost?
I can comment to that. Yes, we received some. That came up several months ago in front of the council. Council didn't direct us to move forward with that project, so we haven't. It's obviously at council discretion to bring that up again. In the spring, we'll be doing another 2-year CIP. We could bring that back if council directs us so. But we talked about it many months ago. I think when it was just opening, that item came up, discussed, and we received no consensus or direction to move forward.
pretty sure I remember it as saying, we'll talk about it at the CIP. And I expected to see it in your report, and then I didn't see it. So is now, can we talk about that now, or do we have to wait 2 more years?
Do you want to wait till council comment? I have no problem with us bringing it back.
No, I'm just thinking if we add it now,
I
then
think
we could...
I think we can't add it now. It's not on the agenda now, so.
Well, that's what I was asking the attorney.
Mr. Mayor, council members, that item could be discussed right now. It could be added. We could add that, continue this for 2 more weeks to approve it then with this addition. If the council chose, it's entirely up to the council.
Yeah, then I'll... Did you have a price estimate, or...
I don't recall. I'm looking if any of my staff is willing to raise their hand. Come on, Doug, I can't read your hand signals. Yeah, I remember discussing. I don't remember off.
Now, as you remember,
when we did the Tamarisk and Rimgate parks, we put in shade structures, and I believe the shade structures for the play areas in both of those were in the $40,000 to $60,000 range.
you know, with the extreme heat that we've had out there, and some of the people that use the park are some of our senior citizens that go out there in the morning or in the midday, which was crazy right now. And in fact, whether the shade is going to be hot, but the fact is that these shade structures would also be rain covers too, correct? I mean, sealed?
Usually they're not waterproof. It usually lets some sunlight down through and some rain will go through. Certainly it's a cover, but yeah, usually they're not completely weatherproof.
All right, I move for us to come 2 weeks visiting it after you incorporate what we talked about. So this is my official motion.
I'll second it. And does that mean, just to clarify, does that mean that they'll come back to us in 2 weeks with a figure to say it's going to be 40 or 35?
I thought that's what Mal said.
Mr. Mayor, Council, yes, the reso that's before the council tonight actually has appropriation amounts for each of the projects. So we'd have to come back with an amended resolution with the specific amount for this project if the council were to vote in favor of that motion.
But we can approve this tonight independently of that and then add it in 2 weeks?
Yeah, the council could approve this, these 6 items, and then bring that back, or they could just bring back the entire thing 2 weeks from now.
And I'll second Councilman Nick's.
Just a quick question on, I know it takes a lot of staff time to do the CIP. Do you have the ability to take on this additional project? If so, I don't know, would you be able to estimate maybe in 2 weeks when it would be done? Just maybe some of those
If I may be so bold to make a suggestion, if I'm sensing a consensus to move forward with the shade structure project, I believe we could bring it back at a later date, move forward with this, and just bring that item back now that we have direction. When we're ready to do that, if we give us a little more time to do the design work and actually get some numbers.
All right, then in that case, why don't we just move with whatever we have tonight and then look to you to come back at your earliest convenience. Thank you.
Does that mean you're withdrawing the motion?
Well, that was essentially a modification of my motion, which I think Scott seconded. So if you would second again the modified motion, we're in business.
I'll make a motion that we accept staff recommendation for the improved or refined CIP for this year, and then we'll make a motion to bring back the shade structure, right? So I move staff recommendation. Good job, thank you.
Staff recommendation gets seconded by me, and then I guess that would be a separate motion that I made that Scott seconded. So we're in business. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, let's cast our votes. I was a little confused. Is there a motion, 2 motions, or?
I think the first motion is to accept the staff recommendation.
Okay, so we'll go off the first motion.
That motion carries unanimously.
And I believe the second motion is for them to come back when they're able to.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a combined motion or two separate. Okay. All right, now we have a second motion. Please cast your votes. Do you need clarification on the second one? You got it, okay.
That motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 10, presentation from the Chief of Police Services regarding crime and crime prevention efforts, submitted by Chief of Police Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm going to defer to Chief Valentine and to Carlo Tomaino, who prepared the report. So, Chief, your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mayor and members of the City Council, police services and city staff have prepared an overview of crime statistics in the city and our crime prevention efforts within the city. So what we're doing here is trying to break down kind of how we receive our information and how we disseminate that information. So in the beginning here, the Sheriff's Department provides weekly and monthly crime analysis reports to police services staff, and we take that information, review it, and look for trends. We then disseminate that information out to the deputies and disseminate the information out to the community. So it's kind of a two-path project there. The crime analysis reports that we receive, the information provided includes when and where a crime is reported, the time of day, the day of week, and the type of crime. We use this data to identify trends and hotspots within the community and to direct the appropriate resources to that area. Ways which we disseminate this information, there's the traditional methods that we disseminate the various bits, and that's from your briefing bulletins, your crime bolos, or your be on the lookout type bulletins, investigative updates, and shift gatherings, where deputies gather at the during their shift or at the end of a shift, and they just pass information along to each other. The non-traditional methods, things that are kind of new for us, is what we call our virtual briefings, our parolee board or digital briefing of parolees in the city, and obviously through email communication. As we get into a little bit of example of what a virtual briefing looks like, that's what this slide here is. And it is, this virtual briefing is in essence a PowerPoint presentation with each slide having different bits of information. And it is emailed out to each deputy in the city, and it also runs on a continuous loop in our report writing room here at City Hall. It'll run through the virtual briefing and then transition to our parolee digital briefing, then go back to virtual briefing. They just repeat one after another. So the types of information you see up here is there would be updates from a crime prevention specialist. We have updates from investigations. We have patrol check information. We have information on the various beat maps and activity within the different beats of the city. For police services, we divide the city up into beats or districts, and then each patrol deputy is assigned that area. They can go anywhere in the city, but that's their assigned area to handle calls for service, so to speak. In addition, we're able to put out educational pieces when we're trying to train or educate the deputies on certain things going on in the city or changes in case law or things like that. This is one of the many ways that we use to distribute that information. In addition to being displayed, it's also emailed to each deputy. So how do we get information out to the community? Traditionally, information would be shared with the community in neighborhood watch meetings, addressing the specific concerns of the neighborhood or community. Police services would also walk the neighborhoods and place door hangers, et cetera, on the various residences to inform them of what's happening. This traditional method of a neighborhood watch group is dying. People don't have the time to meet in their neighbor's living room to sit down for a couple hours to find out what's happening. So what we have discovered is the new forum for disseminating information, obviously, is the internet and social media. So using outlooks like Facebook, Nextdoor.com, the city webpage, the Sheriff's Department webpage, emails. And these are more effective ways to communicate with the community and to push that information out. In addition to these methods listed, we still have to participate in the community events, and we answer numerous questions daily from residents, whether it's on the telephone or walk-ins at City Hall. So what do we share with the community? Using the methods we just described, you try to push out information to educate the community on crime prevention tips, whether that's how to protect your vehicle or home, your business, your identity, things like that, to community alerts. For instance, a while back we had a backpack on the Aliso Creek Trail that we thought might have a firearm in it, so we pushed that out to let the public know what was going on with that and what to do if they found it. And then community events. We're always at the community events to whether we're doing fingerprint kits or those type of things, we're trying to disseminate information to the community. Broad range of topics. So what's happening in Lake Forest? So it's no secret, 2015, last year, we had a 29% increase in Part 1 crimes here in the city. But what's important to know about that is, even though it's a 29% increase, yes, that's alarming, but over a 21-year time period, when you go back through the stats on the Department of Justice website, 2015 was still the third lowest Part 1 crimes per 1,000 residents in the 21-year history that the DOJ has the data available. So as we transition into look at a little bit more relevant information, as we look at what's happening now in 2016, the first 6 months of 2016 compared to the first 6 months of 2015, we have a 14% decrease in crime, Part 1 crimes. So obviously with the rise in crime last year, the Sheriff's Department and the city staff were concerned. So we took a look, sorry, excuse me. Let me get a drink of water here for a second. We took a look at the crime statistics over a 10-year period to see if we could identify specific trends as it related to Lake Forest and what we could do about it if we found them. So what we found in this 10-year period, 2005 to 2014, was that on average, 90% of all Part 1 crimes reported were property crimes. 90% average over 10 years. More specifically, on average, 73% of those property crimes reported were specifically larceny and theft type crimes. That's a significant number. So as we dived a little bit deeper into this, once again we look at 2015. So we pulled the crime reports for 2015 and discovered that 75% of all property crime were again larceny and theft. Only 2% higher than the 10-year average we just looked at. So OCSD pulled those reports, and we searched for the mode of entry of how this crime was occurred, and we discovered that of the 2015 property crimes, 619 incidents, or 67%, of reported property crimes were due to unlocked vehicles or unsecured property, unlocked or unsecured property, which more specifically would be the vehicles are unlocked, the windows are rolled down, there's valuable items left in plain view, an open garage door, unlocked or unsecured property such like a bicycle or some tools or something like that. These things are just left out in the open and easy for a criminal to come by and take a crime of opportunity to steal these items. So these, by locking our doors, by putting things away, by rolling up our windows and being more aware of these things, these simple steps can make it more difficult or less desirable for a criminal to take action. They're going to move on to a more easier target. So as we transition, this brings us to the reason kind of why we're here tonight is to our Don't Make It Easy campaign that we're launching. And the many ways we are trying to educate the community on the methods that we've just described, and by partnering with the city to disseminate this information. We hope to improve the communication and the education within the community so that we don't make it easy for criminals to come into our city and commit crime. I believe Lake Forest is a safe community. However, that lures us into a false sense of security and we leave things out. And in my training and experience, I know there are crews that come from outside the community and some within the community that they look for these easy targets. So if we're able to educate our residents to not make it easy, to lock their stuff up, take it inside, don't leave it in plain view, we can in essence reduce the amount of property crime within the city. And we believe that this is the single most effective way to reduce the property crime that we face. At this point in the presentation, we'll be turning it over to Kalina Hahn. And at the conclusion of her presentation, myself and our crime prevention specialist, Shannon Daniels, is in the audience, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, as Chief mentioned, my name is Kalina Hahn, and I work in the Management Services Department. I oversee the city's internal and external communication strategy. My role here today is to utilize progressive and engaging strategies for various Lake Forest projects, which includes the Don't Make It Easy campaign. We are really excited to work with the Orange County Sheriff's Department to really bring the Don't Make It Easy campaign to life for Lake Forest residents. Tonight, I am here to provide an overview of the city's efforts to support the Don't Make It Easy campaign. Our goals are aligned with the Sheriff's Department, and that is to promote crime prevention, education, and awareness through community engagement. Our goal here tonight is really to push the message out to the community, whether that's locking your door when you leave your car or simply turning on your light when you're not at home. Through constant messaging and branding, we hope that residents can walk away with one or many more of these important points as you see on the screen. The Public Information Office has developed a preliminary strategy that includes several methods to achieve our goals over the next fiscal year. Since people learn in different ways, our strategy includes a combination of educational tactics. Our first approach is through implementation of 3 community contests, which is a key component of the strategy. Our previous contests have been very well received by the community for a number of reasons. First, they're fun and engaging because there's a social aspect to contests. Secondly, there's a sense of community pride. And lastly, we do oftentimes offer incentives as a way for those to increase community engagement and participation. The incentive can be anything from a prize basket or a special featured article in the leaflet or a Lake Forest publication. So here, you will see a list of our contests that we have planned during the campaign. At this stage, the contest details are still being finalized. The first contest is our Community Speaks contest, and this contest will allow residents to share what they believe are important crime prevention tips to the city. The city will then review the crime prevention tips and then also compile them to be included in a future edition of the leaflet. Our second contest is an online checklist challenge. This contest will encourage residents to take a home security checklist challenge with the goal of having residents think about their security of their homes as they go through the list. And the final contest is what we coined a Burglar's Dream House Challenge. This is where residents can view an image of a home and identify vulnerable access points. The focus or goal of this contest is to raise awareness of home security. So our next approach is the production of a short video. Videos are more likely to capture someone's attention and quickly convey key messages. Our next video topic will focus on common tips to stay safe. In addition, we will be purchasing a variety of promotional giveaway items to reinforce the message. These giveaway items will be distributed at various city events. And lastly, we will continue to support the campaign through our normal means of communication, which includes publishing crime prevention or safety-related articles on the website, electronic newsletters, print materials, and social media in a creative way to really draw the reader's attention. And one way to go about this is the use of visuals and infographics and pictures. So in this next slide, you'll see a basic timeline outlining our consistent effort throughout the next year to brand and promote the Don't Make It Easy campaign. So as you can see, we started the campaign last month with a couple of articles that we included in the July-August edition of the leaflet, which includes summer safety tips, as well as a visual image of a house to show residents how thieves typically gain entry into a home. In the next edition of the leaflet, we have a special article, which is a message from the Chief of Police regarding the Don't Make It Easy campaign, and the article will also include various safety tips. So looking ahead, we will continue to utilize the leaflet for maximum exposure, as well as incorporating various community contests and attendance at various city events. The city will continue to work closely with the Sheriff's Department to enhance the Don't Make It Easy campaign through a multifaceted approach. Crime prevention is an ongoing effort, and we will continue to remind folks the importance of how to keep themselves as well as their families safe. In addition, staff also intends to measure the effectiveness of the campaign by comparing 2016 and future years Part 1 larceny theft incidents to that of 2015. Specifically, staff will be looking for the number of incidents in which unsecured property is a contributing factor. Recognizing that community cooperation is important, we are hopeful that the education and awareness will help reduce these types of incidents. We thank you for your time and welcome any questions or comments the council may have.
Questions?
Yeah.
No public comment, okay.
Well, the public comment?
None.
Okay, questions. There's a focus here on Part 1 crimes, but in fact, Part 2 crimes are far more numerous than Part 1 crimes by a factor of 400 or 500%. So I'm a little worried about the focus on Part 1 to the exclusion of Part 2, because that's for those of you who may not be, that may sound funny, Part 2, Part 2 is probably unimportant stuff. No, it's like narcotics and DUIs and simple assaults and sexual offenses and offenses against the family. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Part 2 stuff that's pretty awful stuff. You might say, generally speaking, Part 1 stuff is more awful. I might agree with that, although some of the things in Part 1 are kind of funny too, that they're more awful than Part 2. Part 2 is also awful and far more frequent. So I'm a little worried about the emphasis on Part 1. Number one. Number two, and according to the data, we didn't see it here tonight, but it's past data that the chief has given us. Looking at Lake Forest for the past 10 years, generally speaking, Part 1, not looking at Part 2, but Part 1, our property crimes are down. They tend to go down. Now, they go down in a funny way. They go down and then they pop, and they go down, they pop. But if you look at it, the trend is down, although from year to year there might be a pop. I have some stocks like that. That just reminds me I should sell them in the morning. So the trend has been down. What's been stable, though, has been the personal crimes, crimes against people. Rape, murder, that kind of, the real awful stuff. And I guess robbery is also a crime against, generally speaking, goes under crimes against people. So those have been stable. So again, I'm a little baffled that we're doing Part 1, we're not looking at Part 2 because of the enormous differences in numbers. And then, although I'm tickled pink that we're doing some interventions, you know, when I look at my bang for my buck, if this was, I'm looking at something that generally speaking is going down, and it's property crimes. I'm looking at something that's staying stable. It's personal crimes. They're more awful. If I were doing something, I'd be paying attention on the awful stuff that isn't going down rather than the less awful stuff that is going down. So, you know, as much as I applaud the idea that we're doing something about property crime, Part 1 property crimes, it wouldn't be where I would focus, personally. For those of you who don't know, I do have some experience working with police. I do have a reasonable amount of knowledge about criminology, although I by no means, I could never do the kind of job that the chief and the other people do. So I'm not a police person, but I'm not ignorant about police procedures. So those are two, you know, I would have looked at Part 2 because they're so numerous. I would look at crimes against people and try to do my interventions there where it's more awful and where I'm not seeing change, where generally speaking the property crimes are going down anyway. I would reinforce that too, because generally speaking in the United States, both property crimes and crimes against people are going down. So we're a little bit out of kilter there. Our property crimes are going down just like the rest of the country, but our crimes against people are relatively stable, and that's not the case nationwide. So there's a little bit of a counter trend there. So that's where I would emphasize. And then my third concern is the data, the analysis of the data. You know, for years I've been trying, before I was on the council, since I'm on the council, been trying to find out, does Neighborhood Watch work? I think Neighborhood Watch is terrific. I've been to Neighborhood Watch programs, and I thought they were very well presented. A couple of different people presented them. I thought they all did an excellent job. I think Neighborhood Watch is great, but nobody can tell me if it works. It wouldn't be hard to find that out. I mean, it would be pretty easy. You take a neighborhood before, and you take it after. You take two similar neighborhoods, you put it here, you don't put it there, you wait 6 months, you do those kinds of analysis. It would be pretty easy to find out if Neighborhood Watch works. And for all these years, I can't find out if Neighborhood Watch works. Now you've got a program going. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy for the program. That looks like a good program. No complaints about the program. You're going to measure the effectiveness of all those things. I wish there was something more sophisticated. Or you were going to look at something, is it enough if we just put the flyers on the doors in this neighborhood and not in that neighborhood? Would that have made the difference? You're going to, I guess what they say in the advertising neighbor, you throw it all up against the wall and you see what sticks. Very expensive to do that. I wish you were doing it a little more systematically so we'd get a feeling for, you know, in this program, the thing that really made the difference was fill in the blank. Rather than we're going to do everything everywhere and at the end of the time we're going to see what went down. Well, you don't have to wait. Save the money. I can tell you, the chances are from that very powerful trend, it's going to go down anyway. I mean, that's what our trend is saying. So the fact that in a year's time you're going to put all this effort in, we're going to find out it went down, well, it was going to go down anyway. That's what we expect, because that's kind of what it's doing. So I'm a little disappointed that the research isn't a little more targeted, a little more so that we get some information. Like I say, if you could get a 30% reduction with the postcard without all the other stuff, let's just get if that's what works, or some other element, etc. So, you know, it's great that we did that research. I'd actually like to get, some more of that data of those 600 case incidences, because I think there's probably some really valuable information in there of where we could focus, and that's terrific. That's the kind of more targeted and specialized kinds of research that we're doing. Now, I understand somebody sitting out there, this jerk used to be a university professor. This is not a university. You can't do those kinds of things in real life. And that's probably true. We don't employ, the police are not here to do research. They're here to protect our lives and our properties. On the other hand, by doing research, we could better protect our lives and our properties. So this study that the sheriff is doing with the UCI, on Prop 47, I wish maybe we could piggyback on that and see if we couldn't get more university students interested, if they wouldn't come and provide that little extra stuff, because, I don't want a policeman spending 5 hours collecting data and he's not out there doing his job. But maybe since we've already got something going with UCI, we could get some grad students. I know when I was at the university, grad students would kill. That's probably the wrong word to use. Would die. That's the wrong word. We'd be very excited to have the opportunity to work in real world situations in this and do some of this research to make it more sophisticated. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm very happy with it, but I'd like to see more. Thank you.
I want to first commend Lieutenant Valentine. Thank you, Chief, for the fine presentation you did here. I find that the information encouraging. When we are in a state that violent crime and first crimes, crime one crimes are up because of the rampant use of drugs on the street now, because of some of the bills that have been passed by Sacramento. Proposition 47, AB 109 has made it harder for law enforcement to actually enact, and the courts to enact a discouragement and a drug prevention out there and getting people off drugs. And so I think that these crimes of opportunity, which were according to the statistics, 67% of the part one crimes in 2015 were because of crimes of opportunity, where our community left their doors open, left the garage door open, left their window open to their car, and people were able to grab things of value out of there. So I think that we have a huge potential to even decrease crime in our city more, since part one crime is on a rise in other communities. I actually had dinner with a police officer from Santa Ana last night. He serves as an assistant coach to my daughter's soccer team, and we had dinner with them last night. And crime's out of control and crazy in Santa Ana. So the fact is, in the state of California, crime is escalating. So the fact is, for our city to say that our crime rate's down from 2015, we're down in 2016. I think that we're heading in the right way, and I think that with us being proactive, and Shannon, I think you did a wonderful job in National Lights Out. I think that the community came out in groves to see the helicopter land at the sports park. I'm sorry I missed that, but I came after the council meeting, as I know I said hi to you guys all. I so much appreciate you guys, and I love seeing the Orange County Sheriff patrol cars leaving our new substation, Saddleback, because you see more cars going down Lake Forest Drive, going to other communities, going up Portola Parkway, hopping on the 241. It's just a great thing for our community. And I think that we as citizens can be proactive, whether it be starting a neighborhood watch. And Councilman Gardner, I got to say that there's no way maybe statistically to tell you if neighborhood watch works, but there's no really statistics to say that eating vegetarian diet, it keeps cancer away. The fact is that we think that it's a good step, and it's a prevention, and I think prevention is a key to keeping us safer. So more eyes open in the community. I think that having our neighborhoods more connected with a neighborhood watch program, where we have the phone numbers of our neighborhoods. You drive home and you see a garage door open, you call them. You see a window open in their car, you call them. I think that that kind of community input from other neighbors that are involved with neighborhood watch, I think, will help even decrease the crime rate in our city even more. So I think it was a very uplifting campaign. So in other words, lock it, don't lose it, don't make it easy campaign. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that and getting that out in my community, because I want to campaign with you guys on that, because I want my neighborhood to be as safe as possible. Even though I have a retired Santa Ana police lieutenant lives next door to me, and a Newport police officer lives down the street from me, so I feel pretty safe in my neighborhood. But the fact is that we can be the eyes and ears out there and allow them to do more of their job. So I want to say thank you to the Orange County Sheriff Department for the fine job that you guys do for us, and thank you for the reports, and I have nothing further. Is this receive and file?
I'm trying to keep it open for any.
No, I was just asking Dwight something unrelated to the subject, but since I have the mic, thank you, Lieutenant, for this. Thank you very much. No, I was just asking Dwight if really a vegetarian diet keeps cancer away. I mean, Scott said that, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to eat beef anymore, or chicken, or whatnot. Anyway, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, also, I believe that the chief, as well as Mr. Tomaino, probably could shed additional light on a few of the issues that were perhaps raised by council. So if you're interested in some additional information that might be helpful now, I think they're prepared to respond. If your desire is of moving forward, I do believe that the city clerk received one request from a member of the public to speak on this issue, but the chief is prepared to respond as you might so desire.
Actually, I had a couple questions myself. So I think it's amazing that you did this research and found 67%, I hope I'm quoting it right, 67% of property or type 1 crimes were based on somebody keeping their door unlocked or window or some kind of thing unlocked. And I think that's just a huge, huge finding. I mean, I tend to follow crime and things like that, and it just doesn't seem like I've seen a statistic like that before. So I guess that's a statement first, but to follow up on that, what would you say is a realistic goal? Could we drop it to 25 or 50, or what would be something that we run the successful campaign and we can drop it to 10? Do you have any thoughts on that, or it seems like it's kind of a new, so I might put you on the spot there, but.
Mayor and members of the council, first off, are there any other questions?
Well,
I'll just roll through these all at once.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll follow up after.
As far as a realistic goal, obviously the best goal would be to have zero crime. However, that's not feasible. There's always going to be crime because it's based on an individual's independent free will, right? It's their choice. But as far as a realistic goal, the main goal is to see how successful the education is. What is the response from the community when we do these contests and things like that? Are we reaching people? Do we have 5 people participating? Do we have 500? So that's one aspect of how successful this is. And then overall, I don't want to put a number on it because there's many factors that could affect it. So in my eyes, I'd love to see a 10 to 20% reduction in property crimes. But I think this program is still in its infancy, and we need to see how that data comes in to go from there to make a realistic goal as we move forward with the education and awareness. It's not something that's just going to take place this year or the first half of next year. It's going to be an ongoing program that's going to build upon itself. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And to correct you, if I may, it's 67% of the property crime that was committed in 2015. Of the property crime committed in 2015, 67% was unlocked or unsecured. So that is a significant number. If I may, I'll go ahead and address some other issues that were raised. Yes. Councilman Gardner, I'll go back to some of the questions you brought up with Part 2 crimes, right? They're more numerous. The Department of Justice sets the parameters on what's a Part 1 crime and what's a Part 2 crime. Generally speaking, the Department of Justice does not collect data on reports of crime for Part 2 crimes. They only collect data on arrest, because the reason for this is that from agency to agency across the United States, agencies collect and categorize this data differently. So it's inconsistent in how it would be reported to the DOJ. And in addition to that, a lot of the Part 2 crimes are also seen as proactive policing, right? Part 1 crimes are generally responsive. Police are responding to an incident of a robbery. They're responding to an incident of a homicide. They're responding to an incident of a domestic violence or aggravated assault. And unless we have a deputy sheriff on every block where these things are going to happen, generally speaking, they're hard to prevent. Whereas Part 2 crimes, when I would look at the data, I would be looking as the chief of police, the more driving under the influence arrests we have, the more narcotics violations, the more weapons violations, the more liquor law violations, these type of things. Usually those things only get recorded if the deputy is making that arrest and taking action. Those aren't generally things that are reported to the public on general. They're discovered more from proactive policing. You might get a call of a suspicious vehicle or a suspicious person, and then that leads to, through the deputy's efforts, and gaining compliance and searching somebody or a vehicle or house or whatever it is, then they discover these other crimes. So with that's why Part 2 crimes were not included in this study, is because they vary from agency to agency. It wasn't trying to hide information. It was just that it just varies.
Well, that would be true if I was asking you to compare our agency with some other agency, but that wouldn't be true just looking at our agency. I think it's valid to look at Part 2 crimes. What you say is absolutely true cross-agency, but within an agency, I think it's less relevant. That's just my opinion.
No, you are correct. You are correct. I do have data on Part 2 crimes. It wasn't included in this report because as we did this analysis and discovered the Part 1 crimes and the property crime trend within that, that's where we focused. When we look at Part 2 crimes, specifically, from 2014 to 2015, we had a 7% increase in Part 2 crimes. That's part of that. That's in addition to the 29% of Part 1 crimes. However, I could tell you that over 10-year period since 2006, Part 2 crimes, as measured by the Orange County Sheriff's Department in Lake Forest, is down 30%. And you can look at that in many different ways. Like I said, there's many different variables that affect the Part 2 crime. But that's why it wasn't included, if that answers your question. As we move on, we talked about you call it personal crime. I think you mean violent crime. Part 1 crimes are separated into violent crime and property crime. So when we look at violent crime, that's rape, robbery, assault, aggravated assault, and homicide. Once again, like I said before, generally speaking, Part 1 crimes are crimes that you would respond to after the fact. There are ways to prevent them if you see a trend in robberies happening at 7-Elevens like we had a couple years ago, and we had some surveillances set up, and then we caught the gentleman coming out of the 7-Eleven on Ridge Road in Muirlands. So there are ways to prevent those, but generally speaking, you have to wait for that trend to develop. And it's very difficult to be in somebody's home to prevent domestic violence. The best way to do that is to educate the public on what domestic violence is about.
I disagree with that. One of the things I did in police training was intervention in domestic violence. And in fact, and I'm sure you would agree with me, if you have effective intervention programs with domestic violence, you can reduce future instances of domestic violence. You might not get it the first time, but you can get it if you have an effective program. The second, third, fourth, fifth time, you can reduce that. So I think although I agree with you, these things are hard to get because they're almost always after the fact. The recurrence of them, particularly domestic violence, if you do intervene with them, you can reduce them. Again,
that is correct. We can reduce them. And what the Sheriff's Department does when we have a domestic violence incident, the deputy hands out information regarding victims' rights and all the available resources that are available to victims of domestic violence. Everything from financial aid, legal aid, shelters, transportation, medical assistance, legal assistance, and all these are presented in pamphlets, and as well as going down the path of restraining orders and emergency protective orders and all these things to educate the victim on that cycle of violence and how to break it. And so those steps are being done now. It's a policy of the Sheriff's Department to hand out that type of information on every domestic violence incident.
and I didn't mean to imply you weren't doing it. I was just saying, in theory, you can intervene on these things and reduce them.
Okay. In general, when we look at the violent crimes, we look at a city now of about 80,000 residents. On average, we're looking at about 100 Part 1 crimes that are violent crimes every year. That's roughly the average over the last 5 years or so. 108 last year, 105 in 2014. Overall, it's a low number. Yes, each crime is significant, specifically to the persons that is affected by that, and you want to try to prevent as much of that as possible. But once again, as we looked at this report, we looked at the single most effective way we could try to reduce crime in the city of Lake Forest, and that was focusing these efforts and this campaign on property crime. So we talked about, we mentioned Neighborhood Watch, and does it work, right? I've looked at numerous studies along with Mr. Dunnick on the effectiveness and how do you try to measure the effectiveness of Neighborhood Watch. And ultimately, these studies have cited that there's just too many variables that affect crime to determine if Neighborhood Watch was effective. I don't have that information in front of me to cite those studies or those resources, but ultimately, there's so many variables that affect crime to determine if Neighborhood Watch is specifically effective in a certain neighborhood compared to another. Those studies cited that it was just too difficult. And then with that, with the UCI research, yes, we have a partnership with UCI looking at the effects of Prop 47. That is ongoing. And with that, I think I've answered everybody's questions. I'm happy to answer any more. I don't know if Carlo has anything else to add.
I do. Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for hanging in there with our presentation. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your feedback and questions. I just wanted to add a little bit to the comment that the chief made relative to Neighborhood Watch. There are numerous academic studies measuring the efficacy of Neighborhood Watch programs. In fact, the two most popular ones were a 2002 study conducted by the National Institute of Justice in conjunction with the University of Maryland in 2002. They said, unknown, too many variables, difficult to measure. That was followed by a U.S. Department of Justice study in 2008 that said, we believe that to some degree it is effective, perhaps reducing crime in those neighborhoods by 16%. So it depends on what neighborhoods you're measuring, what you're looking at, the number of variables. Criminology, I mean, as Dr. Gardner, I'm sure, has already researched this, I mean, there are dozens and dozens of variables that affect crime in communities at both the community-wide level, but even the neighborhood level. I mean, things like climate, for example, gender, education. I mean, I can list, there's a list here of 40 that I have in front of me. So it becomes very challenging at our level to, take each issue and then say, okay, let's measure it and let's diagnose this on a more academic basis to understand how effective something is or not. But I agree and I concur that it's important for us to always attempt to do that, right? So relative to this effort, what we're doing is we're not just measuring, if it wasn't clear, larceny to larceny 1 year to the next. What the Orange County Sheriff's Department is doing is beyond that, pulling every single report for Part 1 crime that had to do with larceny theft, as they did in this instance, and then subsequently measuring those 2 years and subsequent years to determine whether unsecured property continued to be a factor. So how we've tried to drill down on this issue without having to dedicate hundreds and hundreds of staff hours to determine the efficacy is by saying, well, let's look at this, and let's say this year we had 619 incidents in 2015, right? We have the program, we launch it, we're aggressive with it, we advertise it, and we'll look at that same factor the next year. Perhaps we had fewer, because I agree that the trend in terms of overall property crime is going down. But what we're looking at specifically also are the police reports that say that unsecured property, to all the degrees the chief mentioned, was a factor. So we're getting a little bit more specific, and it's going to take additional time from the Sheriff's Department to do that, but we believe that's helpful, at least to some degree, without doing a multivariate analysis, right, of this issue, to say, well, we think it's a good program, we should continue to invest staff time and dollars, and we think it's successful. So we'll measure that and we'll bring it back to you. So that's how we're trying to get through that. In terms of violent crime, I think the chief talked a little bit about that. So in the memo that we provided for you, we had a chart that included both property crime and violent crime and the trends associated with each. And in property crime, the trend over 10 years, which was 2005 to 2014, is trending downward. And violent crime just sort of does this. It's more of a straight line. That's because there are fewer of them, so the movement is less in that category. But we have had a decrease. When you compare 2005 to 2014, we've had a net 13.2% decrease in violent crime, which is a little bit behind the national average, which I believe is about 16%. But we're there, and it's going down. So I just wanted to clarify that violent crime in Lake Forest over the past 10 years is actually on the decline.
Yeah, although you used 214 instead of 215, where the numbers had gone up for some reason.
Thank you for that. So we used the data set from 2005 to 2014 because we were also comparing cities that are not OCSD cities. For example, Laguna Beach is not an OCSD contract city. And the data for those cities is not available yet. So the Department of Justice, the UCR, has not yet been updated with 2015 data. So we had to use data that went back a year to complete that data set to include those cities. Now we did, in the report, talk about 2015, right? And all of the OCSD contract cities because we have that data, because we wanted to provide a fair comparison. Even though we couldn't expand that analysis, we would have wanted to. Honestly, if we would have written this memo, I want to say 3 months from now, we probably would have had that data and would certainly have included 2015 in the data set. So that explains the omission of 2015.
I just had a few quick other questions or comments. The 2015, I think you mentioned, Chief, 29% of Lake Forest went up, but just to give a little bit more flavor, the safest, what I think is one of the safest is RSM, and their crime went up. Their crime went up 51%. So you can see, there's 3 cities in the high 20s, ranging from 26 to 29%, Mission Viejo, Lake Forest, and Aliso Viejo. So I think we're in that, I think you mentioned we're in that kind of standard range. I just wondered who agendized this, Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, fundamentally, I did. There has been conversations by the Council that go back, I think, quite some time about maybe benefiting from some sort of annual report or conversation relative to crime trends. And that does occur in some other cities, and so I've talked to the chief about it. And while there's not been a council direction, certainly members of the council have talked about this issue. So we selected this time frame because, as Mr. Tomaino was talking about, you want to use validated data by which to draw conclusions. So you don't want to take information and data sets that are not validated by independent authorities like the Department of Justice and try and draw causal relationships between things. And so we don't have, as Mr. Tomiano said, certain data that comes out until it's validated. But now we're looking at a time frame where we can get the most valid data by which to provide the council with an annual report. In our judgment, it certainly is helpful. As the council has previously indicated, maybe we should be putting things on our website regularly, and we've been doing that, and we continue to do it. There's monthly statistics, and as was indicated, the crime rate for the first 6 months of 2016 is actually down. But, okay, 1 year to the next year isn't really giving you trends. It's just demonstrating the difference between those 2 years. And so you want to look at it more longitudinally in order to understand whether or not what you have is just a one-off sort of anomaly in data and whatever occurred, particularly in an area like crime wherein the variables are many that affect one's crime rate. I spent 5.5 years initially as a policeman, and I drove a police car and I arrested people, so I understand the job pretty clearly as to what it takes to do that. And obviously I've had a lot of academic training as well, but I would say that these types of issues clearly are important to our community. We know by our surveys that there certainly is a high desire to maintain a safe community in Lake Forest, and that certainly is our mutual goal and desire with the Sheriff's Department, and something we regularly strive for. We have been looking at the issues that many of the members of the council have suggested. I took a look particularly at Neighborhood Watch and suggested that Mr. Tomiano do the same. And while there are indices in some of the research that I looked at that said that there's crime rates that are lower in some of these neighborhoods, there's too many variables and it's too difficult to really demonstrate causal relationships between two variables and to say, gee, it's down if you do it. And I think what the chief is talking about clearly is that the nature of how people gather information and understand and act upon it is changing. So we've talked about trying to get a bigger push into social media because more people are using that means by which to understand things. And we have found that short videos, if we do that on our website, people watch them. They're informational, educational. And so my comment to the chief was, well, the presentation that crime prevention officers give in a neighborhood watch, let's put that on video and we'll start showing it on our website. Try to educate more and more people about what it is they can do to help keep themselves safe. And consequently, we felt after looking at that, that it would be important to bring it to the council and let you know that, well, first of all, our crime rate went up in 2015. We know that. But it's just 1 year compared to the next. And this year it's down already for 6 months. Let's look at it longitudinally, and that's what Mr. Tomiano has done for us. So we think it was worthwhile to bring this element that we drilled down to relative to Part 1 crimes. That doesn't mean the Sheriff's Department's not paying attention to Part 2 crimes or not paying attention to what maybe we can do to try and help do that. I've long had conversations with not only Chief Valentine, but every chief going back for 21 years about what affects the crime rate, because officers create crime. They go out and arrest people, and that's a crime report. And so, their success breeds a higher crime rate to a certain degree, and that's what the chief refers to when he talks about Part 2 crimes that are initiated by an officer or a deputy themselves. So we think this is a good approach to try and address one element of it, but it doesn't mean that's where we stop. We certainly want to engage with the community to try and decrease Part 2 crimes if we can. We have found with DUI arrests, the more DUI arrests you make, the less traffic accidents there are that are caused by DUI drivers. So I'd rather see a high arrest rate for DUI than a high incident of accidents. So I'm not concerned about a high DUI rate as much as I'd be concerned about there aren't any, and we've got a lot of accidents that are hurting people because of drunk drivers. So it's really a focus on what you're looking at. So we wanted to share this because we've heard from the council before about your interest. We know there is desire to try and understand causal relationships. we're not an institution of academia here, as everyone knows, but we're doing our best to try and provide for really data-driven decisions about what we're doing. And I think that's important. I think that's what the chief is trying to do at this juncture, is looking at the data. Let's make some decisions and put some resources into that, but obviously we want them to do a variety of things. I think the staff's done a very good job of trying to drill down on one area. There's more to do. I don't think we're going to solve crime. If we could, it would have been a long time ago. And certainly that's an issue throughout not only our community, relatively speaking, but throughout the state, throughout the nation, and certainly around the world. There's crimes that occur all the time. So that's a very long-winded response to your question. I think I answered it right away, but I felt compelled to try and provide some perspective as it relates to some of the things that we're trying to achieve, which is fundamentally we found that a lot of the crime rates that we're seeing are Part 1 crimes that are validated are related to the things that the chief talked about. We want to try to have some effect, and we'll see whether or not that is effective into the future. And maybe we'll hit the mark, and maybe we won't, but we'll let you know.
Great, thank you. My only final comment would be that in the water industry, they love educating children. So they have school events and school contests and school things. However, water is kind of a safer topic. It's hey, can you turn the faucet off? Can you brush your teeth without having the water running? Take shorter showers, those kind of things. I don't know if you've thought of involving like a school education. It's not. I'm not going to make any agenda for it or anything, but it just is maybe a rhetorical question. It is a lot more mature topic. However, I think schools do have kind of like an on-campus safety briefing. Not like maybe an active shooter, maybe not that quite that kind of a training, but there is campus safety training that I've heard, and so I just kind of thought kids a lot of times have a window, a little bit better window into a neighbor or into a home. So I just thought if you consider that, not necessarily if it's something that you don't like, then that's fine too. So. And with that, I think we have a speaker.
Yes,
I just wanted to say thank you very much for bringing it up with it not being on the agenda. There's really nothing, and I know we all agree with this. There's nothing more important the city has. That's our number one thing is public safety, and the effort that you went to in doing the report and the research for all of that and the new program. All of that's terrific. So from my point of view, anytime you want to do that, go ahead, just put it on there because there's nothing we can spend our time more valuably than try to do that. And look what came out. We have some information. We have some things we could do that could, help people. So that's great. So I have no problems.
So once again, I'd like to thank Carla for the data, and Chief, thank you. I appreciate the Orange County Sheriff Department and the job you guys do for us here in Lake Forest. Thank you.
Leah Basil.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just had a quick question for you guys. I like the idea of doing community involvement and all the events to, raise awareness. But I'm sure somewhere in your reports you have a specific statistic that shows particular areas that are more affected than others. And I'm wondering if you have a specific strategy for those small communities where you can actually get more of the community's involvement to prevent future crime in that specific area. Because I'm pretty sure it's not the entire 100% of Lake Forest is affected by Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. So that's my question to you. Thanks.
And with that, I want to thank
Mr. Mayor, did you want the chief to respond to that, or are you ready to move on?
Usually we don't necessarily respond directly to comments, but I think, why not? I think it's a good question.
That's a great question. Thank you, Ms. Basil. Of course, we will look at that information and try to target those areas. Obviously, the internet and the social media aspects is a broad net that we're trying to capture. But as we look at this with our crime prevention specialists and our crime analysis, and we target those neighborhoods, we can still target those neighborhoods with the door hangers and postcards and different things, and have explorers or whatnot plaster those areas to get the word out specifically to those areas. In addition, Nextdoor.com is broken down by specific neighborhoods, and so as we start to blast information out, we'll target specific neighborhoods as well in that regard as well.
So thanks again to staff, the public, for that comment or question, colleagues, and I think it was a really very educational and a lot of research and time, so thanks to everyone.
Agenda item 11, discussion of desired timing of a future City Council discussion regarding parking, submitted by City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is placed on the agenda at the request of the City Council to discuss whether or not there ought to be a specific timing related to a report back by the Planning Commission as to your charge for them to look at parking matters. The staff's provided a report that details the various things that we have been doing related specifically to the Bennett Ranch community, as well as looking at this issue in general, and the approach that we're taking to develop reports that will go to the Planning Commission and giving them the opportunity to thoughtfully consider the various issues that really inform this matter. And consequently, we believe that our desires to ensure that the Commission has sufficient information by which to give the City Council thoughtful recommendations about what we might do. Interestingly, I wanted to share that we did see in the paper that the City of Tustin has a parking problem. My gosh, I don't know who doesn't. In this area. All cities do, but they've decided to spend $50,000 on a study. We're going to watch what they do and see if they come up with answers that maybe we don't. So I would suggest that perhaps the council, my recommendation is giving your commission some time frame certainly is your prerogative. I would give them sufficient time by which to do a thoughtful job for you. And with that, we'll be glad to respond to any questions the council might have, but I think our report does what it is that we intended, which is give you an idea of how we're approaching it.
Do we have any public speakers?
Joseph Jaskowiak.
Welcome.
I'm Joe Jaskowiak. I live in Bennett Ranch. I've been there 14 years. And I wanted to address the timing or the deadline or timeline. I mean, what I just heard doesn't really personally tell me anything, to be honest with you. We had an issue about a year ago, or I became aware of it, regarding permit parking for the residents, and it took like a year for the whole thing to get completed. You know, it took until maybe 4 months ago where the passes were issued, and then there was another study done in Cedar Spring because it wasn't done the first time around, and we found out it was bad news for us that we're not going to do the permit parking, right? The reason I want to get this done as soon as possible because of all this time that goes by and then nothing happens, for example, okay? And what I've noticed is that the problem has gotten worse in the last year and a half or so because of overcrowding. And what happens, for example, street sweepers can't clean the streets completely because there's so many cars on the street. There's no sign saying that the streets are going to be swept on a certain day or a certain time and leave the room or leave the spaces available. I've seen it becomes a health issue because I've seen used diapers in the street. I've seen leaves in the streets where if somebody tossed a match or a firecracker or whatever, it could be a fire hazard. The other thing that I have a concern about is property value. There's constant littering on Cherry and Cedar Spring. Every morning I go there, there's stuff in the gutter. Every morning there's beer bottles, there's water bottles, there's all kinds of fast food, napkins, and bags and things like that. On Cherry, there's businesses from that auto park, or where the auto repair shops are next to Geronimo, where they're repairing cars, or they have some of the pickup trucks have 4 transmissions in them, or they have motorbikes in them, or motocross bikes in them. There's trailers that are filled with garden debris, and also pickup trucks that are, like I said, with the transmissions. I've seen U-Hauls and Penske 18-wheeler trucks on Cedar Spring parked across the street from my house for no apparent reason. There's nobody moving out of the neighborhood. I don't know what the hell the truck's doing there, but people park there for God knows what. I don't know if it's a new staging area for U-Haul or not. Okay, well, I do want to thank the city for making some efforts as far as trying to give us more parking spaces. A lot of the red curves were painted over, but one thing I want to make you aware of is on Cherry and Geronimo by the golf course, I was told that 13 spaces became available because curbs are painted over gray. I personally checked it myself about a week ago. There's really 15 spaces there. That's terrific. The problem is nobody parks there at night. I just drove by there 11 o'clock last night after coming back from the Angel game. There was one car there. Part of the reason is that it's so damn dark over there that people are afraid to park there because they might get mugged. It's, I think, a safety issue. The second thing is, after the spaces became available, no one from the city told any of the residents, I believe, that these places were available. I think something has to be communicated in Spanish and English so people know what's going on.
Thank you. So maybe we'll bring it back to the council.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's useful. I guess, Mr. Wheeler, you got those things about the lights and all that stuff and the signing and everything. Yeah, those, if you remember, those were those spaces we created about a year or so ago because of the other problem. We were trying to fix the parking. We did the permits there, and we did that. And it's nice to know they're there, but not being used. It's not good. It's a big problem. There are some other cities that have done some research. I'll send it. Who's the point person on getting that parking? Carl? Okay, I'll send it to you. Most of them haven't done what we're trying to do. Most of them have dealt with the problem of commercial overflow. But there were one or two that actually dealt with the same problem we're doing. So you may have it already, but I'll send you. I found 2 good ones that had some good idea. That was the basis of the article I wrote about all the factors and things. But that article is better than the one I wrote, so I'll send you that article. It's a complex thing. We don't want to rush ahead and do something bad, but or counterproductive. On the other hand, there's real problems. People, nothing more upsetting than coming home. You can't park on your own block and finding the crap. So it's real life, everyday problems for people, and somehow we need to balance that. We need to do a good job, and yet we don't want to string it out for 6 months or 9 months. And I'm going to just come out and say, in 3 months we should be able to have something that we can go forward to, and then see how you guys feel. You want an extra 2 months, you think, or what do you? But for me, I'd like to say 3 months. Let's do a good job in 3 months.
Coming from being in the private industry, 3 months is a long time for me, but I understand it's not about the product, it's about the process in government. So if you think 3 months is not too long or too long a period, I support that. I was hoping a month or 2, but you know best. So if you think 3 months is fair,
I would prefer, yes, I also, in my mind, I'd say a month, but
we don't have
commission, reports have to go to commissions, they have to meet. I just don't see how in the government we could do it in in less than 3 months and do
No,
it
if it's-
adequately. But
if you think it's 3 months, I support that. If you think the staff can do it shorter, we can go for the shorter time frame. Worst case scenario, we can always extend it. I mean, we can shoot for a better, quicker result. And worst case scenario, and we have an excellent staff, no doubt about that. But I'll just look to you on that. And I also want to quickly mention that was, I've been here for nearly 4 years. Joe, that was a great presentation by you. Within 3 minutes, you gave us a great deal of information. You used it very, very effectively and efficiently. I just want to share that with you. And I know it's very, very hard. 3 minutes goes by. It takes me 3 minutes to say hello. So you can always do this if you want to step into my shoes.
And he's not exaggerating.
No, I'm not exaggerating. It takes me 3 minutes to say hello. Another 5 minutes to say how are you. Anyway, thank you for that presentation. And Jim, you have my full support in however you want to proceed.
So, go ahead.
So yeah, I think trying to move this along makes sense. So I'd like to hear what the staff thinks about that time frame. But I don't think that I think the issues here are mutually exclusive. Where we're looking at a long-term what long-term solutions we can make to parking issues, but we have a specific issue in this particular Bennett Ranch, Cherry, Second, Cedar Springs area. And it seems to me like in the staff report that the staff's already working in that area. I know Joe had mentioned that the staff, I think, had reached out or something like that. And so I see that as a positive. I would assume that's going to continue. Is that a fair assumption? Okay. So, you know, this is the pressing issue that we're dealing with right now. And some of the specifics that have been mentioned, it sounds like the staff is going to look at with respect to lighting and promotion. I was a little unclear. We talked about the potential of opening up some space on Cherry next to the driving range and reaching out to businesses first. Has some of that occurred already? And
Yes.
okay. And do we have a timetable, or I wasn't sure. Has something been opened there already? Or?
I've driven by there myself a couple times. I want to ensure that, yes, the Public Works Department's been out there. They've increased the area.
Okay.
But there is still some overnight parking that is prohibited there. So we would recommend carefully for folks who want to park over there that they pay attention to the signage so that they don't inadvertently get a ticket. But we did add additional spaces along that driving range. And I heard the comment Mr. Wheeler did about the lighting issues. We can certainly take a look at that. But the answer is yes. We've done that, and I know we're reaching out to people. I did, based on the council's interest in this issue and certainly that of the community, I asked Mr. Tomayino to head a multidisciplinary effort to look at all of the issues involved in Bennett Ranch. And I think that maybe is what you're talking about. He's been meeting with the members of the staff from different disciplines, be it Public Works or the Sheriff's Department and others, to look at what really is going on in that area. And we've been doing surveys and checking the parking in Bennett Ranch at various times of the evening. And so it gives us an idea of what is going on within the community itself. And we're talking to different people who live there in order to get a good sense of what they believe the varied issues might be related to what they see, because sometimes parking is simply a manifestation of some other kind of problem. So we can try and address the symptoms, or we can try and address what may be more of a core issue that gives rise for concern. So Mr. Tomayino and the effort that he's undertaking is really looking very specifically at Bennett Ranch. We've done this before. We did it over on Oswego at a different period. So we think it's a good method to try and engage a particular community with a specific problem they think they have. So I think you characterize it somewhat correctly, because the council knows that there is actually opinions by the Attorney General that's talking about the ability of cities to even have some of these kinds of permit parking programs. So you do have a longer-term issue to look at the policy, and there is a short-term issue as it relates to Bennett Ranch. We're trying to deal with the Bennett Ranch issue in that fashion as quickly as we possibly can. And when we go to the commission, we may suggest to them that they look at Bennett Ranch separate from a longer-term policy, maybe send some of the earlier issues back to you sooner, and while continuing to look at the longer-term issues.
Yeah, I like that idea, Dwight, and that way I'm not so concerned. I think when we originally talked about it, the idea was hold up on Bennett Ranch while we got the whole thing solved, but I like it better if we go ahead with Bennett Ranch and continue to and solve that somehow, and then we don't have to put quite so much pressure to get it done maybe earlier than we would. So I don't mind backing up the deadline, assuming that we don't have a pressing problem. The only problem, there's something else. I mean, I'm sure you got another application coming to you. It may be more pressing in Bennett Ranch, but there's another one right outside the door. So there are more, but they're not here at least.
Joseph, I want to first thank you. We hear you. There's been no one on this council that's been more supportive of parking permits for the community than I have. I think that it's when you come home, and in my neighborhood, there's not usually someone parked in front of my house, but when you come home and all of a sudden there's a car parked there, kind of who's parked in front of my house? But when you have it continuous night after night after night, and then you have the debris left on your curbside, I feel your pain, and I understand what you're going through, and I think that we're going to look at that, and I'd like staff to go out and look at the parking over there by the driving range and see if we could add some more extra lights out there and see if that'd be more secure for them. Was that what you're talking about, the extra? You went from 13 to 15, you counted 15 spots open? Yeah, so, but we'll look at that, and I think there's things we can do in the near side on that, because we want to do things that free up that and allow them not to park in front of your homes if that's possible. But it's something that it's a longer term program, because Tustin, I know Irvine, Mission Viejo, there's a lot of cities that are dealing with this same problem right now. So I'd rather have Planning Commission. I think you have scheduled for the beginning of October, to get on schedule for Planning Commission. Is that correct?
That's what we're shooting for. As the council knows, the commission meets once a month. But clearly, we're going to get our initial report to them as quickly as we possibly can. Getting it there in September is not likely to occur. I'd have to, I guess, verify with Ms. Ackerman, who's sitting over there looking like, come on, Mr. Manager. But yeah, I think we're shooting for October to try to get them an initial report. But I'm not certain how long they will want to consider the issues, and clearly any questions that they might have that we need to come back for. So we want to keep all that in mind.
Now, on that, at the driving range over there in the light industrial area, is there, since we've opened it up with overnight parking in that certain section, are any rigs parking there, or are we allowing it to be size limited?
I've seen the signs where we're keeping the size limitation as it relates to
size?
Yes, on the overnight parking. But yes, that sort of prevents the larger vehicles that would have a desire to want to park there. And as we know, when you open up sometimes overnight parking like that, the folks who do long haul with trucking like to use the spaces, and so we're cognizant of that. We're trying to ensure that it is for folks who feel the need to and don't have the space to park near their home over in the area generally where there's multifamily there. There is always a distance issue, how far people are willing to walk. And this is one of those kinds of issues where you seem to be chasing it a lot, and that's what's going on in some other communities. that's exactly what we're doing, Councilmember Foy.
Okay, I mentioned, or Joseph mentioned that he's seen rigs parked on Cherry over there by next to Bennett Ranch, and I'm sure that that's not viable for the semis. Is that true? Can we check on that? Because what's happening is when you have overnight parking, you sometimes have that are cross-country rigs that are truck drivers that actually come into your city and will drop the car off and stay for 2 nights and then come 2 days later and pick up the truck and leave again for a cross-country drive. And so that's something we got to be cognizant. What we've done is we've opened it up. So can we just have staff look at that and check into that? That's my only request. Me? Yeah.
Can you come up and speak into the mic?
Just 2 things, just to clarify. That Penske truck, the 18-wheeler, was on Cedar Spring, not on Cherry. Okay? So that's where it parked. All the 2 U-Hauls and the Penske were on Cedar Spring.
You seen that consecutive nights?
No. One was, the Penske truck was a Thursday, the U-Haul was on a Saturday, and then another U-Haul about a week later.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was not on the area by the golf, or in the area by the golf course. The other thing that's confusing is the signage, okay? Because if I look at the way things, they say you can park after midnight, and before it was you couldn't park from midnight to 6 a.m. along that whole block, right? So they open up the spaces for like 15 cars, and it says end of, this area or whatever. But then when you get closer to the concrete company or whatever that is over there, then you can't park from midnight till 6 in the morning. But this past Sunday, 3 cars were ticketed in what I thought was the correct zone, and the problem was they said the deputy put down that they parked from midnight to 6 in the morning, and I don't think that's accurate. I think somebody made a mistake on that because the signs are too confusing.
Yeah, we'll check into that because that might clarify and ease it up a little bit right now while we're doing the research that we need to do it right. So thank you for your input. We really do appreciate it. You did a great job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have nothing further.
So, no, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you coming out, speaking on behalf of you and your neighborhood. And I think we all want to expedite this process. I appreciate Councilman Robinson's comments on kind of bifurcating those. I'm just concerned if we push too fast, we may exclude any of the findings that Tustin comes up with their study. And I don't know how recent they had that. Was that on July agenda, or is it coming up? Is it in August?
We read about it in the newspaper just recently, so we need to reach out to Tustin and find out where they're at in that process and when they expect to be done. We'll continue to do our own research, but certainly it would be enlightening to see what it is that they obviously do. And it might inform us a little bit more, as well as reaching out to what other communities have done. This is a problem in the area generally, not just Lake Forest. So it sort of is trying to share mutual best practices amongst jurisdictions, which we try to do often.
So I'm willing to expeditiously wait for Tustin in their report. So
Nothing for them. That's good.
So I guess we can just, if there's not a motion, I guess we'll just...
Yeah, I think just ask the staff to report back to us when, in your weekly updates, when that report's available and et cetera. I agree completely.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and we had the speaker, so I guess we are on to the city manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
And we'll go to city council comments.
Let's see, we had an animal rescue group open up in Lake Forest this week or last week, and the planning department was very helpful to them. I sat in on an initial meeting they had, was very helpful getting them open, so isn't that delightful? And they're a long way from being ready, but that was a very positive step forward. We talked about tonight the transparency thing for the Attorney General and about the for the attorney. in general. The transparency thing with the sports park, I'd like to have you, when you're doing that, if this is okay with everybody else, also talk about the sensitive police material. For example, in Ms. Basil's comments about the areas. So, that might appear, these are the areas that we're going to highlight and blah, 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 and yet we wouldn't want that to show up in general. So perhaps if it's agreement with you, everyone, in his research on that, he could look at, sensitive stuff, not just the cameras, but anything police-related or security-related. I think we have a consensus on that. Okay. Village Pond Park, Mr. Johnson's here, Village Pond Park. You gave us an excellent memo, and your request that we get an alternate attorney to look at what we've been doing. I think your memo, I don't know, I'm going to be sued. Can I talk about that, Mr. Attorney, about his request for the alternate attorney? Or is that going to be something I can't talk about?
Mr. Mayor, council members, the FPPC opinion as regards you is in regard to discussion of Village Pond Park and the lake dispute. Requesting an alternative opinion on Brown Act issues and FPPC issues arguably gets there, but it's entirely your call, Mr. Gardner, Dr. Gardner.
So you think I'm safe to make that motion?
I think the safest route when dealing with 1090 issues is to stay as far away as possible, but that is not my call to make.
All right, then
Make that motion.
Are you going to pay my lawyer bills?
I'm going to make the motion.
You can make the motion when it's
I'll make the motion. I would like to...
Well, wait, I'm not finished then.
Okay.
And the other thing is talking about peculiarities of the legal system. I'm a little bit disturbed with the way our closed sessions are going. Can I talk about that? That's okay, so long as I don't do Village Pond Park.
I'm not sure what the conversation is going to be, so I can't opine.
Well, it seems to me, for example, that we discuss things in closed session, and then we come out here and we don't reveal what we talked about. We may reveal it weeks later, but we're not doing it on time. It seems to me that some of the things we decide in closed session don't actually happen. It seems to me that we have no minutes in closed session. So when I think that something that we decided in closed session didn't happen, I don't have minutes to go back to and say, you see, it didn't happen, I see in the minutes. So it seems to me that in closed session, we need to have a discussion about closed session. And I'm raising that in open session to try to get some consensus to have a discussion in closed session.
We should have brought it up in closed session.
There was no closed session this week or last week. So there's nothing illegal about bringing that up in open session, is there?
Mr. Mayor, council members, that would be an open session discussion. The issue of reportable actions reported when action is finalized, not when it's made in closed session. So until an action, again, is finalized with written documents, there's no reportable action. As far as minutes of a closed session, that can be requested and required by the council. Typically, it's required by the district attorney, imposed upon a council from outside, but the council can certainly decide to take minutes of its own closed sessions. That's council prerogative.
Okay, then I'd like consensus to discuss in closed session, the closed session.
I don't think we can.
That would be an open session discussion, not closed session.
Oh, that's
There's
an
nothing
open
in a safe harbor there.
All right, then I'll agendize an open session discussion on the closed session.
There you got it. I second it.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, any minutes would not be public. Those would still be confidential minutes.
Did you have anything else? No, he's done. Councilmember Nick.
I can't understand. I can't picture in my head why this would be even remotely illegal for me to move so that we can get a second legal opinion. With all the respect that I have for the city attorney, and he knows it himself, how much I respect him and the previous city attorney we had. I am just dumbfounded, and I cannot say much about this. I'm just dumbfounded that I can't say what I wanted to say. So I know some of my colleagues to my left are eager for me to say something so they can spice the footage, put it on their fake Facebooks, and then report me to FEPC and et cetera, et cetera. So that said, I can't figure out and I cannot see for the life of me why I would be even remotely be doing something illegal if I move for a second legal opinion on this. If it confirms what we've been told currently by the current city attorney, and it may, it'll just put the minds of the community members at rest that there's nothing more that we can do. Our hands are legally tied. And if it doesn't confirm, if it is a different opinion, we'll take it from there. Am I to understand that there may be a legal issue with me moving on this, Matt?
There's nothing illegal about it.
There's nothing illegal about
Not at
this.
all. No.
So, I mean, I would be happy to pay your attorney fees, but I can't imagine why this would involve attorney fees. This is... because you're conflicted out. That's what you're saying. Well, you were still asking for it to be a public, just a second opinion. I don't even think that would have cost you anything. But anyway, so that's my motion. My motion is for us to go about securing a legal opinion, a second legal opinion on Village Pond Park, whether it must remain in closed sessions, or whether we can move it to open session, an open dialogue, and whether we are bound to not move forward with the repair of this, I don't want to call it fiasco, but this situation.
So just to clarify, I don't think you're looking for a motion, you're looking for consensus, right?
I'm moving, yes, technically, I guess I'm looking for consensus for someone to support me so that we can, do we need to agendize it at this point, or I guess we need to agendize it, right? Okay, so I'm asking for a second to agendize this item for us to publicly discuss it and take a vote on it in the open session. It'll be a public session. It'll be a public vote, right? Good, great. And Jim can second me on that, can't he? Jim can second me on this.
As stated previously, the FPPC opinion opines that any actions related to Village Pond Park
or the
lake dispute,
everything is a conflict with that. So either Dwight, Andrew, or Scott, one of them needs to second me for this to happen.
If we're going to stay as far away from the edge of 1090 as possible, that's accurate.
So we're going to have a discussion about whether we'd get a second legal opinion?
Yes, we're going to have a discussion whether we're going to get a second opinion.
Okay. And would there be some analysis of cost or anything like that?
It's a second opinion, Dwight.
It will cost money, though.
Yeah, but it'll cost... we can afford it. Just look at how bad the situation is. If we can help it, Scott, I don't see anything funny about this. If you spend $350 a night at hotels, we can afford this bill. We really got to do something with Village Pond Park. You said in your ballot statement last week that you are going to see to it that we expedite or we go about fixing it sooner than later. Let's do it. Just second me on this, Dwight. Let's have a public discussion. Let's get some attorney. It'll cost you $50,000. Let's do it. We can afford it. We can afford it. If we cannot afford that, then what good are we? and we can afford it. You know it, I know it. I just want a second legal opinion. If it confirms that we're doing the right thing, great. Well, not great, but it is what it is. And if it doesn't, we'll take it from there. We got to fix this Village Pond Park. You said it in your ballot statement last week. Just help me out here. Jim can't help me. You got to help me out.
If you want to have the discussion, then I'll have the discussion.
Right.
I wouldn't say that this necessarily helps anything. All this really is determining is whether Jim can participate, correct?
No, it'll help whether it'll tell us whether the legal opinion today that Village Pond Park is joined at the hip with the lake issue, whether that's a legitimate excuse for us to keep this in closed session or not.
Okay, if you want to have the discussion, that's fine, but just finding a legal firm, getting them brought up to speed is going to take a lot longer than I'm willing to want this to move forward.
Okay, so
that wouldn't be making it happen expeditiously. That would be slowing down the process. But if that's what you want to do, if you want to potentially slow down the process.
No, I don't want to slow down the process. No, I don't want
I'm willing to
slow
have
down-
the discussion
No, I
at
don't
a
want-
future meeting.
No, I don't want to slow down the process. Don't say that.
You have consensus. Well, I think that is the reality of what will happen. I'm just expressing my opinion. But if you want to have the discussion, I'll have the discussion.
Mal, will this slow down the process? I mean, I don't understand why Dwight says this may slow down the process. All I'm asking for is a second opinion whether we're doing right as to Village Pond Park.
Mr.
I
Mayor,
don't know if that's necessarily his area of opinion, so...
Let him answer. He can tell you if it's not.
I'll simply say that it does take time to understand the facts of the case, and the legal issues have been discussed in closed session, but as the mayor said, I really shouldn't be opining on whether or not it's...
No, I realize it does take time. I realize it takes money, but it's not going to slow down anything else that we may be doing otherwise. In other words, we can chew gum and walk at the same time, can't we?
It depends on what the council wants to do in terms of parallel paths.
This is amazing. Where do I go from here, Jim? Okay, but I don't want to slow down anything. I want to just parallel path. We're doing whatever we're doing, or we're not doing anything, or we're not doing everything we're doing, whatever. We're doing whatever we're doing, just parallel path. Let's just get a second opinion to make sure that we're doing right by the people, to keep this in closed session, and whether there is something we can do to separate Village Pond Park, although I think it is separate already, so that we can fix it and not have it kept hostage as it has been. Thank you for your second, Dwight. I thank everybody who participated tonight, all those who had to leave, all of you who are still there. I thank the staff. I thank Chief for his report. Carlo, you are impressive. Carlo, you are impressive. If I were to be born again, I would want to come back and be like you. You're just impressive in your presentations. Thank you. And I thank all my 4 colleagues to my left. Good night, everyone. God bless America.
And there's still a chance to be born again. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
No further comments tonight.
Okay.
Well, after the last city council meeting, I actually raced over to the Lake Forest Sports Park and caught the tail end of the National Lights Out. And I want to thank Shannon Daniels for having a great turnout of our community. And actually, it was a sign for Lake Forest and our community to actually honor the badge. And in so many of the communities that we see, the news flashes of people that don't honor the badge and bad things happen. It's a lack of respect for those that are in authority that is actually causing so many of these problems nationwide and having these outbursts. Even in Milwaukee the other night, it was an armed assailant that actually pointed a gun at a police officer that got shot, and then they had the riots. Well, the fact is that I think that when we get pulled over, you pull over. If they tell you to sit down, you sit down. I think it's honoring the badge out there, and I think that it's a lack of respect for the badge that has caused so many of the problems that we have in the nation right now. So I want to thank our sheriff department for doing such a great job, and we do honor the badge in Lake Forest, and so thank you for the job you guys do. Great turnout. It was one of our best, and so I was honored to be there, and I'm honored to be the home of the Saddleback substation. I think it's a great honor and privilege to have them stationed in our city. I also attended La Pata gap closure, which was the most significant gap closure in the history of Orange County. It actually connects the mountains to the sea, so it was a huge undertaking by Orange County Public Works, OCTA, TCA, and the surrounding cities to make that happen. So it was an alternative to the 5 freeway, south and north, and so I think it takes off some of the traffic that we're seeing bottlenecked on the 5 freeway as you hit the Y going south on the 5, or coming north from San Clemente into the Orange County Basin. You're having bottlenecks north and southbound, and I think that this gives an alternative to the 5 freeway, which is a great feat that we have just opened on Saturday in time for San Juan Capistrano School District to utilize it at their high schools. And so I had the pleasure of riding down with Mayor Hamilton, and as we were driving through Mission Viejo, something I brought to his attention, because my daughter practices in Mission Viejo right now, and I took him through some of the neighborhoods. They don't have the handicap cutouts that we have in our residential communities on every corner. There's many corners that don't have curb cutouts for strollers and handicapped individuals that are in wheelchairs or strollers or bicyclists. I think that it's a great feat that we have so many of ours cut out to where you hardly can find. I don't think you can find any that are cut out in our community. The other thing that we are noticing that on our center mediums throughout the city of Lake Forest, we have either removed the sod and have drought tolerant plants, or we have some alternative turf. But the fact is, Mission Viejo has sod throughout all of Marguerite, all the way up. And so I just want to say that Lake Forest, we have a great staff, and I want to thank you guys for all the work that you guys do in making us look so well. With that, I have nothing further. I'm looking forward to our 25th anniversary celebration. And I wish you guys all a great rest of the week. Thank you.
And that turf they had in the median in Mission Viejo was not green.
No.
It was brown. So it doesn't look that good. And you come into Lake Forest and it's like, what median, every median looks awesome. So I enjoyed that trip to the La Pata grand opening. Great event. I think it's going to be a very good regional transportation solution, even impacting Lake Forest to some extent. And also went to the Lake Forest Day at the Orange County Fair.
Oh, I was there too.
2 of us were. So that was a good event. And there were some other cities. Yeah, I don't even know who they were. But it was Lake Forest, actually Lake Forest Day at the Orange County Fair. So yes, and a Lake Forest residents. Yes, she sang the national anthem. So with that, I have nothing more. We're adjourned.